What is the harsh reality of Berserk? Let's talk about it. For one, the story of Guts as a main character is the story of an underdog. He's born from a corpse in the very beginning. This all shows the grimness of the world, almost like a beginning of a legend or a saga. Similar, for example, to how Ymir died and created the world in the Norse mythology. His flesh was the earth itself, his bones made the mountains, and his teeth were for the rocks. It's incredible, but compelling, as a type of storytelling. This cycle of life and death starts with the birth of Guts, and the old one ends with the death of his mother. Much like Ragnarok, where the death of the Aesir gods is the most important point, and the renewal of the world. And the Aesir gods were exactly the ones that killed Ymir, which then in turn created the world. More specifically, Odin, who killed him, this giant. And then Odin was killed during Ragnarok. I very much like that thought, because it extracts some philosophical essence out of the birth of this man of Guts under a hanged man's tree. So, for the point of the underdog story, the mere fact that Guts' mother was nameless and we don't even know who his father was, points to the fact that Guts was self-made. He was only shaped by his experiences, which were always tough, bruised and stomped and crushed. Guts never surrendered. He was like a cockroach that scurried around from the graveyard. Not even an atomic bomb could kill him. However, Guts as a human has a higher moral desire. He has a sense of connection, a sense of duty, of loyalty, of strength. This underdog named Guts takes us on a journey, a legendary one, and we find it compelling. It's almost like mythology. The second point I have is that the story is of a man, of Guts, more specifically, as a main character, who is maybe from the beginning a grey character. He's not exactly the good guy. We know he has some good in him, and we sympathize with him, but he's not the protagonist, the good guy, the hero in that sense. He's a man that has to build up his character from the very beginning, as we said. He was born from a corpse, from the absolute zero, from absolute hell, similar to how Kratos in the games, he had to fall down to hell and had to be rebirthed. He was almost a dead man walking, and that's Guts. And he's nothing, Guts and Kratos alike. He's nothing without his wounds and scars and the weight of his weapons. It's no coincidence that Guts prefers his symbolic large swords. And his swords and weaponry are getting more and more massive as the story progresses. And we then reach the Dragon Slayer, which is just an incredible amount of steel a human could bear. Guts is probably the only one in the story who could lift up so much weight and not be under the influence of the god hand or have any outside help, like magic. But what characteristics does this young man have? What does Guts have? Well, he has nothing, but he does possess true precursor emotions of a mature male, because we're talking about the development of a male character. He has depression and he has anger. And what is the world to Guts? It is just a cesspit of vacuum and pain. Well then, in that case, it is most understandable to react like a berserk warrior who is disillusioned with reality. Not unless blood is spilt and blood is bled does man finally find the door out of there. And so does Guts at some point. Well, maybe, because his struggles never actually end, but he reaches some end goals. Quite often, a guardian awaits by the door, a woman. They gatekeep the return to hell, if she is true to her man. In the end, there is salvation for the monstrous spirits of growing males, and Guts is exactly on that path. He's struggling from nothing, and he's building himself up, and that's why he's admirable. He's a strong male with good morals, and then a woman by his side who he can protect. Well, maybe even his whole overall story of Guts is true for males. Struggle never ends, and whoever cops out is not a man or even human anymore. Look at Griffith. And then the last and third point that I have written down is that the world is not a blade merely at your heart. But you do have to survive its onslaught, because even the slightest unserious attitude towards that fight spirals to death, both of the body and the soul. And that's exactly what happens to the characters that give themselves up to the Behelits and the God Hand. It just spirals and spirals down in the direction of hell, or the God Hand realm, when they have to make a choice. I'm too weak to get myself out of the situation, so I need something outer-worldly. And that is, of course, lacking of respect for themselves and the world, and mostly for those that they love because they sacrificed them. Well, in the case of Guts and every character in Berserk, life represents a battlefield of a Spartan, and Guts takes on that fight. The more he gets accustomed to disciplined shield bearing against enemy arrows, the better his chance will be to extend the spear into the enemy's throat. The mind is calloused, and your charge forwards is even more vicious. Napoleon once said, "Glory is fleeting, but obscurity is forever." Or even another quote of his is, "Death is nothing, but to live defeated and inglorious is to die daily." Well, Valhalla awaited all its warriors, but not the cowardly nobody. In the end, death embraces us all, but the story of fighters never dies. And what a surprise that the story of Guts is so interesting to us modern people nowadays, and mostly modern men. Thank you for listening and watching.